weirdly, I didn't really, I suppose, choose. I think it's funny, an awful lot of hairdressers, I don't think necessarily choose it as their first thing that they think of. A lot of us can fall into it. Nobody in my family had ever been a hairdresser before me, so there was no history of it there. And I actually, would you believe, Greg, always wanted to be in the army. I never wanted to be a hairdresser.
Okay.
But I discovered when I was 17 that I had a serious issue with my hearing in my left ear, and that I was going to find it very difficult to get into the army. So I had to rethink what I was going to do. And I had gone to Crumlin College to one of their open days, and they had like a hair and beauty course that they were doing. And I just kind of thought, sure, I'm kind of interested in doing hair. Had always kind of messed around doing my friend's hair. And I thought, sure, I'll do that course and give it a go. And I think from the minute I walked into a salon to do my work experience, I just kind of fell in love. And that was really, that was it then, do you know?
All right. And no regrets.
Definitely not. No, but like I know it sounds really weird, and it kind of sounds maybe a bit cocky to say this, but I always knew that whatever I did in life, I'd be giving my all, and I'd be really good at it. Because
Well,
even like every job I ever had, I worked in a bar, I worked in like a cafe, like everything I ever did, I always gave it 110%. So I always knew, like even with the hairdressing, that I'd be good because I'd work really hard at it. And I think that's the key thing for anything you do in life, isn't it? You gotta give it your all, whatever it is you want to do.
I think the key indicator there is that you're a people person, because if you just name the jobs, pub people,
Yeah,
cafe people, you know what I
yeah,
mean,
yeah,
hair people. And I think if you are that type of a person who just loves being around people, you aren't but not going to be successful at it. You know what I mean? Because it's where you're comfortable. It's where you're most comfortable. You know, and I always believe that if you find so, I always said to my own kids, if you find something you love doing, go and do it. Don't worry about
yeah,
how much it pays, because you'll never work another day. And that's been said so many times now. And I'm glad you fit into the same category.
yeah.
So,
I suppose I fell into it. I know as well. I think I was, my auntie had a hairdressing salon. My mum used to help her out, and we probably were brought up in it, always around the salon environment. And probably, I think from the age, I remember my brother being asked when he was 15 or 16, could he go up and help out? And he lasted half a day. He came back, and I said, fuck it, I go up. I was hungry for a few pounds. And up I went into the salon. And within a few days, I was always good at art, and I always loved being creative. But I think it was the environment and the crack. And there was two really good looking girls working there as well, which helped. So I probably fell into it that way and loved the banter, and like I'm a people person, I suppose, and then I love that interaction, I suppose, really.
so what age was that then when you started full time?
I was probably sweeping the floor when I was about 14. I went, done my junior search, went into fifth year, and then I said, no, I'm going to do hairdressing, and went in probably at 16, maybe, as I went up to start working for my auntie.
That's and she
It,
uh, she was happy to take in
well, she wasn't
labor.
really. I like didn't go down well at home. Nobody really wanted me to do it. So I did, like, I had to fight very hard. And then 6 months in there, I realized, I need to get out of where I lived. It was a small town. So that's probably when I went and actually joined the likes of Peter Mark and went in as an apprenticeship.
Which it wasn't a bad place for us all, was it really?
No, I have to say, like, if you look at it, I think it's definitely in my DNA. I think if you look at a lot of salon owners, successful ones, like, I have a lot to be thankful for. They give me a good foundation. They definitely, you worked your arse off, like,
Yeah.
but they give me that, and they give me that mentor, and I probably needed it at that age, even communication skills, meeting and greeting, the simple black and white of the industry. So no, I would be very grateful to them, and I'm very good, I still have that respect for them.
The same as myself. I always felt they taught us what I would have said is systems and procedures. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like that you had systems and procedures in place for stock, for wages, and I always felt they taught us very well how to run a salon, but not necessarily how to run a business.
No,
Because
absolutely.
it was a need to know basis, and we
Yeah,
really understood what we needed to know. Yeah, would you
it
agree?
is, and I think that's where I learned. Like came out, I did not know anything about wage percentage, stock control. I knew how to keep it down, or you know what I mean, but
Yeah,
I didn't know how
yeah.
much color cost. So I was very green when I started and opened up.
I
Like
hadn't got a clue much of tube color.
hadn't a fuck, hadn't no, winged
I
it the
really
whole time.
think back now. Yeah.
Okay, so I got into hairdressing when I was 13. My dad got me the job. I think because I was the wildest of his 5 daughters, he felt maybe I needed a bit of taming. So at 13, I went working. And at 16, I got my first full-time job in this very salon, my new salon. And I worked here for, I think, 13, 14 years. So I suppose I was always good with people. Do you know what I mean? I think I didn't know it at the time. Anything to do with people. I worked in old folks' homes, that kind of thing. I loved being around people. And this was just a natural progression. It was something that I excelled in. And it was the first thing I excelled in because I failed every exam I ever sat. And I don't want it to be kind of like everyone's story, but school wasn't a good fit for me. You know, I mean, it was kind of like putting a round peg into a square hole. But it wasn't like, I think I would have chosen this career either way, whether I was good in school or not. But yeah, that was it. It was my dad.
Your
That's
dad
the
felt
answer.
a good hairdresser. Get you off the street.
Or else he needed to watch me. His workplace
Yeah,
was only around the corner.
I think it comes through all the time when I chat to people. It's a people business, isn't it? And we're tend from
Yeah.
the time before we start, we're already very social before we even start our careers in hairdressing.
Very.
So it's
There's that social intelligence that we don't even know we have. You know?
Okay, Greg, my earliest memory of being asked what I wanted to do was probably at about 6 or 7. And always, I used to go with my mom to get her hair done every week to the salon and just sit there kind of in awe of all these really cool people and, you know, a real happening environment and stuff. And it just was always the case that, you know, whenever somebody asked me what did I want to do, I wanted to be a hairdresser. There wasn't even a consideration after that. You know,
my memory of going to the salon with my mum was the smell of bloody perm lotion and asking my mother, "What did somebody let off there?" So I had a totally different memory. I can have to say I didn't see hairdressing until I got to my late teens, and then it was wow! Look at all the beautiful women in here, and look how trendy
there is that too.
So I can't say I started as early as you, Sam, but continue. Sorry.
Yeah, and you know, I got the opportunity. I mean, bear in mind this was in the 80s when, you know, it wasn't uncommon for people not to do their leaving cert. And I did first year and I did second year, and I got an opportunity to do a hairdressing course, and I left just before my 14th birthday, and I didn't even have the intercert as it was then. Junior cert now done. You know, obviously, would I advise someone to do that? No, absolutely not. But it was different times then, you know. In the 80s, you know, what was waiting for you was usually the boat, not even the plane. You know.
True.
And I went and done the hairdressing course and kind of never looked back really.
And was the course in Kerry?
It was a private course actually in Tralee, which incidentally is where we have one of our salons is in Tralee. But yeah, I had a year-long course there. And then I went to Dennis McGuire in Oliver Plunkett Street in Cork for a while. And just got into it from there. I guess what happened, you know, from there, loved it, and you know, would never consider doing anything else.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? You actually nailed it, Greg, because do you know what I always say? I'm very lucky and also privileged. Yes, hair did just come naturally to me, and madly enough, like I actually started hairdressing when I was about 6 years of age, and as some people say, I had it in the womb. I mean, I was all I ever wanted. There was never ever any other question of what I was going to do. I started braiding hair when I was about 6 years of age. I started making money braiding hair at 6 years of age for ballet schools and communions and confirmations and, you know, drama societies and all that sort of carry on. Yeah. So there was a little entrepreneur in me too, obviously back then. But yeah, you know, my destiny was here. I really love what I'm doing.
You always, like, if the careers guidance said to you, what do you want to do? You said,
You know, actually what, and you know, I love that you're actually saying that. When I was at school, and I like, mom and dad actually took me out of school. They could see where I was going. So when I got to 15 and I was heading for junior cert, they were like, you know, this girl, she needs to be just unleashed to her future. And they did. They pulled me out of school, and there was an awful shock, and there was a real perception. And I can remember teachers saying to me, you know, you'll be on the bottom of the Balbriggan Road, because I grew up in Skerries, and you're going to be going to that dole office. And do you know what? I remember just thinking, well, you know what now? I'm going to show you that I can make it, and that I will be more than just a hairdresser. And this thing of you're just a hairdresser. But you know, I really had a grow. I loved my training. I wanted to be qualified yesterday. You know, it was just it was kind of just grab it. Let's get out there and grab what I can and do it and do what I love. So I mean, you know, I think that side was very interesting.
where did you start? What was your first salon?
I actually started in a salon and sorts, and I walked out after 9 months. That's honesty, right? After being asked to clean skirting boards, and it was how I was asked, actually. I'm not going to say where. And then I went to one of your family members, Greg, Paul and Angie Drumgoole. And I worked with them for a couple of years in Lower Stephen Street, and Angie and Evan trained me. And after that, then I took
there and still did a great job of training the next generation.
Oh, listen, that they as you say, you use the word legacy. I mean, honest to God, they are someone to be really admired. I love, you know, look at their business. I mean, what a success story. And I left Paul and Angie, and you know what? There's one thing, and I have spoken to Angie about this when I was getting my icon. Like, I left them, and I really regretted leaving them, Greg, at the time. Because I was halfway through my training, and it's the one bit of advice I give to anyone, that if you're halfway through your training, we all hit that wobbly stage. You're in your age, you're 19, you think all of a sudden I know it all, or I'm not hanging around for this because it's not fast enough. You have to wait, you have to pace yourself. And I did go through that stage, and I went actually au pair, and I had this mad idea that I was going to be an au pair for a few weeks. And I did, and I downed the tools. But I wasn't. I was a lost girl. I knew I just needed a break. I needed to really stop and think about what I needed to do. And I went back, and I actually went into Aidan Fitzgerald in Blackrock, and I did a course with Aidan, with one of his girls. He's this fabulous trainer, and she finished my training for me, and that was it. I was ready. I was ready for the road. I was ready for the world.
And then you moved to who I would say would be, you know, the perfect inspiration for you to jump to the next level. I felt this would have been back when I think back then, when I seen you coming, when I seen the success of this person. I'm gonna let you name who it is, and their passion and what they were doing, and then seeing you on their coattail, that you kind of felt, no, it's inevitable that this girl is watching and learning and just feeding off it, you know. So who was that?
So it was David Murray, my fabulous friend David Murray. But you know, actually, Greg, before that, I actually went into management for years, and I managed a salon in Swords for years, which actually is no longer there now. But I was watching David Murray like a hawk. So I was one of those kids that I went to everything. I went to the IHF, I went to the championships. If the L'Oreal was on, I went. At the time, that would have been before our own, like obviously I'm with Wella, and it was before our Vision show. But anything that was on, I went to. And I can remember seeing David on the stage the first time he won Irish Hairdresser of the Year. And I was like, who is that man up there? Because I'm going working for him.
Yeah.
That's where I want to be. And I sent David my CV. And this is back in 2005, 2006. And I will never forget the day he rang me. Like, I nearly crashed the car. I couldn't believe it. And he asked me to do a haircut. And I did. And he actually asked a family member of yours was working with us at the time, Carl. And he actually asked Carl to come back and have a look at my work. And Carl, of course, hung him out dry and said, oh my God, he loves your work. And David hadn't even offered me a job at that point. It was gas. But you know what? I actually really, even though I love where I am, I miss David Murray very much. I miss my life in Chameleon, because there's nothing more fabulous than to have an employer that recognizes your worth and good work. And for an employer to turn around and say that was beautiful, or that's a beautiful haircut, or to be proud of you, really, really meant the world to me. And I think David really believed in me. And it's not, you know, if I wanted to reach for a goal, he used to say, go for it. You want to go for that goal, go for it. And I think that's really important in our industry, especially as an employer. And I certainly am that type of person myself anyway. So it kind of portrayed me of where I wanted to direct my own business when I went into business.
Yeah, why did I choose a career in hairdressing? I guess one of the main reasons why I kind of fell into it. I know a lot of people would say that I fell into the hairdressing as such. Nobody in my family ever did hairdressing. My brother and I literally locally could not get our hair cut the way we wanted it. We experienced some dodgy times going through our haircuts, you know, with all these tram lines, undercutting. I mean, we were very cool back then, but very young, and nobody could really do it locally, or nobody actually wanted to do it locally. Any of the hairdressers that we went to see, maybe we didn't go round enough, but always sort of talked us out of it. So my mum and dad actually just bought us clippers, my brother and I, a pair of clippers. And we started cutting hair at home ourselves. And one thing led to another. We started cutting more friends, and more friends the message started getting a little bit wider, further afield, where like fathers and sons started coming down to our, my parents actually set up their garage like into a studio. So it's kind of like in here, actually. This is my studio space at the moment. But they turned it into like a punch bag. They've got a table tennis table, darts board, and all these guys started coming down. We were charging like 50p or £1 back then. Geez, I'm going back a long time, aren't I? I sound really old there. But that's what we were charging. And it just led me into, when I was coming to leave school, what was I good at? I loved cutting hair, and I just wanted to explore the wider variety of our job. So, I mean, I know I was just men's hairdressing. I was doing barbering work. I was doing that, inside out, back to front, realistically at the time. And I just wanted to open up a different sort of, different tool, a different sort of, learning around hairdressing. So I wanted to work with women, do hair up, and everything about that was really attracted me towards the craft, really.
Well, there, Paul, yourself and Ian, is there just the two of you?
Just the two of us, yeah.
Just the two. How did the parents feel? Because they just both have that drive to become hairdressers.
Well, I think so. We both cut hair. We both always cut our friends' hair.
Yeah.
He did his friends, I did my friends, and then people come round. So simultaneously, like the two of us would be sharing clients,
Yeah. And mum and dad are happy with the career choice.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest with you, he went on to do, after he left school, he went on to do a business course he did. And I went into hairdressing, and then he came back to hairdressing, and then he went off to London. He went off to Liverpool first, worked in an incredible salon there in Liverpool, and then went to work in Charles Worthington. And Charles Worthington back then, this is at the time I'd moved to Ireland, actually. So my brother went to London, worked in Charles Wellington, got a really good foundation there with
What
with them.
enticed you to Dublin?
Pardon me?
What enticed you to Dublin instead of
What
the bright
enticed me to
lights of
Dublin?
London? Yeah.
Well, it was our friend David Barnett, actually,
David.
you know, HPS training. So he basically invited me over because there was jobs going there, and he wanted a mate over there as well. Myself and David went to school together, and I knew his family really well. So, and Ireland didn't seem that far away from Wales, which is not actually. It's only 56 miles to be precise, but it's not that far. And I was 17, I was young, I was confident, you know, busting with energy, trying to make a career for myself. And I just wanted to work somewhere great, get a good education, get a good foundation, and actually be around great, you know, like-minded people. And when I got the job in Tony and Guy, I really felt at home there. There was, you know, great energy, a great creativity there. A lot of amazing hairdressers stemmed from that route, I've got to say. And it really, you know, I've seen so many people grow into these phenomenal either session hairdressers, you know, they did like magazines internationally, you had business people, you had management teams, and plus Alan's vision was generally to increase the amount of salons doing franchising. And you know what? I was a part of that movement, if you like.
Well, you know, it's a funny story, that. Let me tell you, actually, I didn't choose hairdressing as a career. I never chose hairdressing as a career. It's a really odd story. My passion was always sketching, drawing, painting, anything to do with like the creative arts. And I had this childhood dream, Greg. I was mad on Marvel comics, and I still have a loft full of old Marvel comics. Goodness knows how much they're all worth now. But I was obsessed with Marvel comics, and my dream, my desire was to illustrate Marvel comics. I was going to write out all these comic strips. I was going to send them to Stan Lee in New York. He was going to employ me, and I was going to draw comics, and that was my gig. And so I researched how I could do that, and I knew I had to go to college. I knew I had to do fine art with the graphics content and everything that I had to do. But a long story, the college that I wanted to go to wouldn't accept me for another year. I had to be 17 years old. And so in that time, my mum, who's a real strong northern working class woman who's made good, and she said, well, if you think that you are just hanging out for a year until college starts, you've another thing coming. So get your backside into the salon, get some work done. I'd already worked as a Saturday boy, you know, shampooing behind the bases during school holidays. Come down here, you can help out in the salon, and I'll pay you a wage, and you can save up, and that way, you know, you'll cost me a lot less when you go off to college. And that was the idea. So I went to college, I went to the salon, and the salon was everything that I expected it to be. It was a lot of middle-aged ladies kind of sat down, having their hair done and talking, and it was a really buzzy atmosphere. And back then, it was the early 80s. It was super busy. There was some crazy hair going on because we were all doing the spiky hair and the different colors, you know, and you remember texturizing and point cutting was a big thing, and everything had to be ripped and torn, and it was all stuff like that. So it was exciting, really. And but really what changed me about it, Greg, and you mentioned it before, was my brother. At the time, my brother was teaching on behalf of Vidal Sassoon, and he was the youngest principal of the Davis Muse Academy, the Davis Muse School. And he lived in London, and every weekend, I'd finish work on Saturday, I'd jump on a train, and I'd go down to London to hang out with him and his friends. And when I got down there, I recognized there was this whole different world to hairdressing. There were all these incredible creatures, these fascinating creatures that not only did hair, but did furniture design and did architecture study and did all these incredible things. There were shows and exhibitions, and oh my gosh, it just blew my mind. And speaking to these people, I recognized that this world of hairdressing, you know, I wanted to be an artist. And what I recognized was hairdressing is full of them, Greg. They're all over the place, these artists. They're incredible, these people. I was thinking, oh my goodness me, this is... And so I'd come back to Darfield. The salon's in a little village, tiny little village called Darfield. And I'd bring back these ideas and I'd start working. And what I found, Greg, was, and I love this about hairdressing, these middle-aged ladies who were sat there having their hair done, they were so open to ideas and so open to new things. And when you said, hey, how about if I kind of make your hair really spiky on top and put some red tips? oh yeah, I'd love that. That'd be great. I'd like, yeah, go ahead. And they do it. That's when I quickly realized actually the most open people are people in later middle-aged years, not the teenagers. They're frightened to do anything different. It's the more middle-aged ladies who are looking for some excitement. So I started to do all this stuff, and to cut a very long story short, Greg, I just started to fall in love with it. And I recognized there was a lot more to hairdressing than what I'd seen from my parents was hard work, long hours, working 6 days, and spending all day Sunday doing bookwork. That's what I'd seen from my parents. And I know what you exactly, you know. And I thought, God, I don't want that. But what I then saw behind the scenes was this other world, this really exciting world that existed in tandem with that. And that's what made me fall in love with it. And 37 years later, here I am. Started in 1983. I was just 3 years old when I started, very young. And
similar to myself, yeah.
And here I am, from 1983 to today. And that's why. And I still love it. I still get super excited about it.
Yeah.
So it was a little bit by accident. So obviously, you know, I'm a bit gobby. So when I was younger, my mum and dad were just getting so irritated with me. And my mum was like, look, you just got to get a job. Go and get a job. You're 14. You drive me crazy. You need to like do something. So after school one day, I rocked up to the local cool salon that there was. It was called Simon Paul. And I basically got my elbows out, went in there, went, I want to work here. So can I work here? And it kind of happened like that. So I went in for my first day. I remember, I think I was like literally there for about 10 minutes, and I turned around to one of the head stylists and I was like, do you actually get paid for this? They were like, yeah, it's a job, you know, like hairdressing, it's a job. And I remember like, I just loved the music and the atmosphere and the people and the fashion and the buzz of the place. Oh, I just absolutely loved it. And I got home, got paid 10 quid or something for the day. I didn't care. I didn't care if I got paid or not. It was bloody brilliant. And I got home to my mum and dad, and I literally was like, I think I know what I want to be. I want to be a hairdresser, you know, and, you know, the rest is history, really. I worked sort of like late nights after school and things like that from the age of 14 to 16. But back then, because I'm a complete dinosaur, right? So this would have been like early 90s. I did the college syllabus before I left school. So by the time I was 16, I was qualified.
So you went straight into a salon as a stylist?
Yeah, well, a really crap one, but yeah.
We can all share that going back. You know, I think the opportunities that are available for young people today to be the best they can be are there, whereas we had to grab onto every little bit that was there, and some of them a little bit, some of our teachers a little bit antiquated, and some were excellent. You know,
don't forget, back then, right? Way back then, colour wasn't a big thing. Okay, it was just sort of coming in. It was still a lot of perms, just grey coverage, but it wasn't very fancy. And so, because it was old school, right? The colour was seen as a bit like the dog's body's job to do. Unless you had scissors, you weren't very good. So my job when I left school was to do all the colours. So I was kind of thrown into the world of colour. I didn't actually know what I was doing, but you know, whatever, I did all right. Very busy because I was the only one that liked doing it in the salon. So I got loads of clients. But I just loved it. And I know it was old school. And I know now looking back, it wasn't very trendy or anything like that. But it was such good training. It was such good, you know, learning all about community, you know, and some of those clients had gone to that salon for about 50 years, you know, all the teachings that I had for those 4 years I was there, you know, was a blessing, really.
Like I think I've seen somewhere on your website that said that you felt old school values.
Yeah, massively.
You know what I mean? Like,
so it came from there.
Yeah.
You know, when
that's
I talk about that, it's like
it might not be the salon that you envisage you owning yourself, but you know the culture and some of the standards that are there you're going to take. That might not be to do with the scissors and comb.
Yeah, massively.
Just how to look after people. So then,
do you know why I choose? there was actually my mom's friend, right? I remember I was about 12, and she was this tall, blonde, permy, skinny girl. And you know what? I just idolized her. I thought she's coming to our house, and I just thought she was beautiful. And I remember saying, I love what she does. And I swear to God, I was wondering if people saying to me, you just like Christine, you don't actually want to be a hairdresser. But funny enough, she opened her own salon when I was 13, and I started out with her then, just getting her lunch and cleaning the place. And yeah, I idolized her. And I suppose when I get stuck into doing something, I always stick to it. So I just fell in love with it then and continued it. So that's why I chose hairdressing.
It was the beginning, it was January 1998 I started, because was Peter Mark Liffey Valley opened. And my uncle Oliver Barrett, you know him, Craig.
I remember Oliver well.
Oliver was the manager, and asked me that I wanted a Saturday job and Friday evening after school. So I initially went up just to sweep the floor, make cups of tea and coffee, and I got £11 for 4 hours on a Friday and all day Saturday. You got £11. So I thought it was low. I only did it for the £11. So I was 13. And then Oliver just started to train me, and I just fell in love with it, and I just went from there. And then Oliver trains when you started, when you were the Peter Mark, when you were staying then in Liffey Valley, and Oliver started to train Sandra then, and that's how it started. It just it snowballed after that.
It's funny how we all went to the same path, though, isn't it? Like how you went to Oliver, I went to Oliver, and we aren't.
But we went from
Did you never work together during the training?
No,
never. And so your journey was through Peter Mark John. How many years did you get to before barbering kicked in?
I started.
Finished, didn't you?
I left when I was 17, early 18. I went straight into barbering then.
And then Sandra, you were.
Oh, I was like Peter Marks right up until I probably would have been still there, only for John.
Yeah, right until we had Ella.
I was like I loved Peter Marks. I loved working hard. He moved into town to Ultimate Hair and Beauty just for a change, really, and I loved there as well. But then we started family, so
that was the end of that.
So I lasted a year with them, and then I just kind of started going around.
Well, we worked in town for you. It was great. Town was great to work in because you know kids. Yeah. Me and Sandra know each other since first year.
Yeah.
Maybe sixth class. Yeah, we're about 12, I'd say, do we? Mm. And had the odd kiss and a cuddle when we were 13 and 4.
Yeah, he did, but I loved it.
To be honest with you, Craig, I think hairdressing I didn't choose it. It's chosen me to be a hairdresser. From a kid, my family always said it. I was always, playing my hair. I just loved hair. That's all I can remember is hair. And, like most Irish mothers or whatever, my mum had her hair done every week, and I was the youngest of the family. So I was always brought with her to get her hair done. So I just loved going into a salon. I loved the buzz of it, everything. And then my brother, when I was about 11, he met a hairdresser. And like that, you do all the family hair at home and all that. And I used to sit there watching her blow drying hair. So by the age of 12, I asked for my Christmas presents. I asked for hairdryer and brushes and all this stuff. And I don't know if you remember Shaping Hair that used to be in the Ilex Centre.
Yeah.
And I remember I used to walk past there because my grandmother lived in town and I went to school in town. So I used to go past there and I knew everything I wanted. So I got all these brushes and this hairdryer for Christmas. And then I was blow drying neighbours' hair. That's how much I wanted it, because I was quite lucky when I was younger. I'd see something and I could pick her up. So I used to blow dry my mum's hair then and my sister's hair. And that was back in the day when Farrah Fawcett was in and your Breeze blow dries. So, I was just wanted to have 20 brushes in the hair. So when I was 13, I really wanted to do it. And I kept saying to my grandmother, I really want to be a hairdresser. I really want to be a hairdresser, because in school, I liked it, but certain things I didn't like. So if something didn't interest me, I was bored. So I remember one day, I remember when I was around 13, I went to Peter Mark in the Ilex Centre, and I asked was there any jobs going or whatever. So they told me to come for an interview, and I met Des, as I always call the the godfather of management, because he was a big part of my beginning.
Gandalf, I call Des Gandalf.
So when I was like 13, I decided I really wanted to be a hairdresser, and I kept saying to my grandmother, I really want to be a hairdresser. I really want to be a hairdresser. So she kept saying, well, go and try and get a job, and if you like it, then I'll speak to your mum and dad about it, because my dad didn't want me to be a hairdresser. He was a builder, and he wanted me to sort of follow in his footsteps. And when we were going into hairdressing at that age, yourself, Greg, being a hairdresser, there was always the stigma with it. So I don't think my dad wanted me to go through that. So anyway, I went and met Des, and I didn't realize you had to be 14 at that time to get a job. So I lied, and I said I was 14. So I used to go to the Alex Centre on late nights to work, and then work on a Saturday. So basically, I'd go from school, go to my grandmother's house, who lived in town, and change into my clothes, put a hairdryer and all that into my bag, because I thought I was going to be blow drying hair. And I would go into the Alex Centre to work. And it was so funny, because even then I wanted, because you had your shampoo basins and then you had your neutralizing basins, and I hate washing hair. So I wanted to get onto neutralizing basins. So I actually lied and said I could neutralize perms, which I couldn't. So I was always that way. Like, you say, can you do something? I go, yeah. And I wouldn't. And then I would go to someone and say, how'd you do that? Do you mean? So I was always wanting to learn. But sadly, when it came to my apprenticeship, Des didn't have any apprenticeships at the time. And yeah, as you know yourself, back in the day when we were, especially in the 80s, it's not like now where you can't get assistants. It's really hard. But then you had lots and lots and lots of people. So there was only so many apprenticeships given out. So Des sent me down, and he says to me, well, we have an apprenticeship in another Peter Mark salon. So what about if you go there? So it was from beside where I lived, and I was like, okay. So I was like, but how am I going to tell, my parents, or how? So my dad went to London at the time to do work. So I was like, okay. So my grandmother says to me, don't worry, I'll talk to your mum. Okay. So I basically forged my parents' signature in school to leave.
We're not recommending any young person does that now.
But I did that back in the day, and I said it to so I basically spoke to my mom, and she says, okay, well, I'll go and speak to your school. And I went, no, there's no need to, I've done it for you, So that was something I was told never to tell my dad. So I basically went and I started my apprenticeship in Peter Mark, and I basically worked with the wrong manager at the time. She wasn't good. She basically told me that I would never make it as a hairdresser. I had no talent. And I believed her at the time, but I was so determined that I wanted to do this. I went then to a salon group called Main Street Hair Group at the time, which was in Liffey Street. And most of the people that actually worked there, they all worked in London. So it was a really great vibe of a salon, and it was where you could be creative. And that's when I really realized that I wanted to be creative in my training. So they taught me a lot, but sadly the salon closed down. So originally I was born in the UK, and my parents lived here, and I had brothers that lived in the UK. So I decided to go to London to father with Sassoon. So luckily I was working around the time when Annie and all those people and Tim Hartley was there, and they actually offered me a job at the end of it to come on board as like a sort of an assistant, because back in the day Sassoon was 7 years training, not like Dublin 4 years. So I had to come in as an assistant and sort of restart over again. But I didn't care. I just wanted to be there in the salon. So I worked there for nearly 4 years, and then decided, I was homesick, and I wanted to come home, so I landed back in Dublin.
I think, geez, and I say this to everyone because I get to ask this question so many times over in the career, and I definitely did fall into it, Greg. There's no doubt about it. At school, I was one of these people who loved practical subjects. I loved technical drawing. I loved carpentry. And years ago, I was quite a bad asthmatic, and I remember just when I think back how it did happen, I remember one time being in at the doctor and I had a bad infection, and she said to me, what are you thinking of doing as a career? She was very black and white, like, you know, and I said, look, to be honest, I love carpentry, or I love technical. And she said, don't even think of going near carpentry because it's going to be full of dust and you'll be dead in 10 years. So I thought, right, okay. And she said, would you not, you have a couple of relations in the industry, like an aunt and, you know, cousins and that are do hairdressing, you know, would you not think of something like that? And I kind of went, what are you on about? Like, you know, she said, that's a lovely career. She said, look, I go to a guy up in Kilchimott in County Mayo, and he has a waiting list. And I go up there every 6 weeks to get my hair cut, and it's a great career. And she said, you'll meet lots of women and everything. And I said, oh, God, there's a good one now. Maybe there's an opportunity, you know, when I was a young fella to meet lots of women. And to cut a long story short, came home and I thought, oh, maybe I should try this, you know. I remember talking to my mum, Lord rest her, and she said her dad years ago worked on the railways, but every Saturday evening in their homestead, there'd be a group of guys that would sit in the kitchen and wait to get their hair cut. And he used to give a great haircut. And my uncle was the same, my grandfather's son. So I thought, well, maybe there's something there. So one day, head for Sligo, went around every single salon. I said, look, if you're looking for someone, will you keep me in mind? The very last person I met was a man called Ignatius Beglin. He has a hair salon in Sligo town. He had 2 hair salons, and this is where he came out. His own salon was called Headhunters, and the second salon was called Salon 2. So that's where the name came from. When he opened his second salon, that's how it became. And he took me on. Yeah, so he took me on back in 1987, and at the time he really didn't need someone, but he said, look, he just said, I'm going to give you a chance. He said, I like you, and from there it took off.
Well, the answer to that is simple. I didn't choose it. It chose me. And I know that sounds very cliche, but I can never remember a time when I didn't want to do hairdressing. When I was a kid out in the street on the estate, I was cutting all my friends' hair. Now, really badly. There was a lot of dodgy mullets going around back in the 80s.
Coming back in now.
They are coming back in now. One of my kids is one that's terrible. But I didn't want to be a hairdresser. I just knew I loved doing hair. So around 16, I think it was, I said, well, what am I going to do?
No.
So I thought I better do something about this thing of hairdressing, seeing how I could get into it, basically. So I went down to the local FOSS office, it was FOSS at the time, and there was a hairdressing course on that I applied for. So to get onto the course, you had to do a number of different tests, aptitude tests, and a dexterity test was one of them. The dexterity test was where you had to move bolts from one pole to another quickly. So anyway, at the end of that day, I thought I'd done really well. I was sure I got the course. 2 days later, got a phone call. It was a lady from FOSS, and she said I didn't get the course. And she asked me, had I ever a problem with my hands? I said, sorry. Yeah, I said, I don't think so. I'll check with my mother. No, I've never had any problems with my hands. Basically, I didn't move the bolts from one pole to the other pole quick enough. So I didn't get, but maybe you think then.
Wouldn't have been able to pass up a perm roller.
I mean, that could have thrown me off the whole career path that I wanted to go. No, Jesus, something wrong with my hands. But anyway, I didn't let that sway me. And on 5th year holidays, in 5th year in school, on the holidays, I went down to Petermark. And I said a time, I said to myself, every Friday at 4 o'clock, I'm going in to see if there's a job. I'm going in to ask for the manager and see if there's a job. And I just knew if I hounded her enough, I like clockwork, went in every week at the same time. If I hounded her enough, if something did come up, she'd give it to the nuisance that was coming in every week. So she did, and got a summer job after about 5-6 weeks, I think, of hounding her. And it came time to go back to school, and thank God my parents, I still remember my ears to the bedroom wall, listening, they were talking about it. Would they let me leave school to go and do this hairdressing thing? Because nobody else in this family ever had done hairdressing before.
Yeah.
And so they said, yeah, you can take.
Where were you in the pecking order? The youngest,
I was the eldest.
The eldest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they said, right, you can finish now 6th year, take a year out. If it doesn't work, you have to go back to school and do your leaving cert. So that was it. I was gone into the world. And I have to say, yeah, never look back. The best decision I ever made was come into this industry.
And when your time in Peter Mark, you done your training, you moved on into management, because I think that was our first encounter. Was we were both young managers starting out, and competitions, were they part of it then? When did the pick in as a young hairdresser?
The reason I really got into competition work was because I felt Peter Mark especially was such a big company, and if you wanted to get noticed, in your career at that time, there was no social media, there was no other way of getting noticed. Only I felt through competition, and I'm still a big believer in competition. I think when you're preparing for competition, you're researching. At the time, I was getting Hairdressers Journal from the UK. I had that ordered every, I don't know, weekly or monthly. Fashion magazines, now they have social media, they can research all of that stuff. So you're researching your industry, you're researching fashion. Then you're practicing, because your looks at the end of the day are going to be judged by your peers. So you practice on your looks. That can only have a positive impact on your day-to-day salon life. So that's mainly the reason to get noticed, to raise my profile within hairdressing.
Put yourself away from the crowd. Yeah.
You have to do that. You have to get noticed. And like that, I got a Wella diploma in London. That was my first diploma, first piece of paper to say I don't anything to do with hairdressing, was a Wella diploma for colour. But also with competition, it really, as you said, I was into avant-garde, and you can't do avant-garde on your everyday clients, unfortunately. Avant-garde really interested me because it opens up a whole new world of hair. Stuff you can't do on people's heads, you can do with avant-garde hair. So I was fascinated by that world, and
I was 15, and I had a cousin, Norman Jacob, from the UK, and he used to come over and cut my mum's hair in the garage, and I just thought he was a great guy, a really cool fella. He wore big long jumpers and boxing boots. He had a diamond in his tooth, a couple of highlights. He had an amazing girlfriend. Her name was Carol, an Indian girl, and I used to wait to sort of get a good night kiss from her before I went to bed, and I was obsessed. So I thought, my God, this fella has it made. So I just, the summer before my inter-cert for school, I asked Norman first, could I go over to Maidstone in Kent, where he actually lived, and he had his first salon, and he always worked there on a Friday and a Saturday. I said, could I go over and work for the summer? So I did that, and he was the one who told my mum, I don't know whether he's going to be any good or not, but he's mad into it. Like he's going crazy with the girls, and he's sweeping the floor. He's going to parties. He's losing the plot.
I can see it now. Nothing's changed.
More mousse.
So are you around 17?
More mousse in his hair than the women.
18, Shay.
I love it.
So you were a 17, 18-year-old with a lovely Dublin accent, and the English ladies loved you.
Yeah, it was great. I really, really enjoyed it. And, he was the mentor for me in the sense of, like, he knew a lot of hairdressers. He put me in the right direction. And he said to my mother, just let him go and see how he gets on. He's so young, he might as well give it a go. So that was
So where was the bulk of your training done then, Shay?
So Kieran Nevin was the main man really for me. Kieran, my mother got her hair cut with Kieran. And she sort of said to Kieran that I had been over in the UK with Norman for the summer. Kieran, everybody knows Kieran. He's a great guy, but a very serious guy. So he was really good for me in structure wise, because he's very sort of strong in what he's about, even the way he cut hair and all. And I was a bit of a lunatic. I wanted to just carry on and go, I don't need to do that. Let me go, So he
was some blow dryer, wasn't he? Oh my God.
Oh, yeah, like 10,000 brushes in the hair, clean. His haircuts were precise. And he was really good for me, I have to say. Kieran was, I did 4.5 years with him. He was amazing.
Brilliant.
I fancied the girl who worked in the salon. It's as simple as that. I won't say her name because she can see this, you know. But yeah, there was a Bewley's restaurant right across where the salon was, and I used to have my lunch there. And then I'd look over at the window, and she was working in the window, and I'd be like nearly shaking. And my uncle, my mum's sort of uncle or godfather worked there. His name was Hervey Olivieri. It was in Peter Mark in Stillorgan, and he got me. He got me in the door. That was his real name. He used to cut with the old barber, you know. Amazing hairdresser. You know, one of these guys who could do like 300 haircuts in one day, you know, back in the day, you know, one of those. Had about 14 juniors working for him, you know. He was one of those kind of hairdressers, and brilliant French, amazing hairdresser. He got me in the door, and yeah, I mean, as I said, you don't have enough time in the day for me to tell you the rest of that story then, you know. But that's how I started. It was, it was just like, and it was an exciting job. It was an exciting time. Salons were exciting places. And you got a chance to meet girls and to have fun and to dress crazy. And yeah, like, it was just, you know, if you were going to do a trade, it was the one you were probably going to do. And I just gave it a go. I had no intentions of being a hairdresser or giving it a go. I just needed a job, gave it a go. Really liked colour, really liked the colorist, really liked the cut of his jib, and really wanted to be him. And then, you know, he became my first mentor, Pat, in Peter Mark Stillorgan, and then he moved into North Aisle Street. You know, things happened for me, and you know, and I went on from there, and then I moved into hair and beauty in Grafton Street, and you know, so I moved quite quickly. I moved quite fast. I found myself in you know, their high, as what they would call their flagship salon in hair and beauty, fairly, yeah, within a couple of years, you know, things happen for me quite quickly color wise.
Yeah. So and was color because you loved color, or it's just that you were crap at blow drying?
I'd say it was a mixture of both, you know what I mean? I'd say I just didn't want to do the other stuff, you know. I was literally in the door, and I wanted to learn how to put a plastic cap on, and I wanted to learn how to foil a hook. I was fascinated by I was fascinated by the way you would put a cap on, you know, the way you would and tie a cap at the back, and you know, and have it down here, being able to get hair in there. I was fascinated by that whole. Yeah, putting a plastic cap on was the beginning for me, really. Within a week or two, I was trying to put caps on and trying to pull out highlights without getting holes so the bleach would go through.
When we say cap, Andrew, Peter Mark, it was actually a plastic bag. Let's be straight.
Yeah, it was a plastic bag. Yeah, it was a plastic bag.
Can you imagine the health and safety of today?
I would love to get one of those bags now.
Squashing.
Do you remember how stretchy they were? Do you remember how there's no way they're stuck in the environment forever, those bags? Do you remember how stretchy they were? They were like, you could stretch them back here. There was like, yeah, obviously not eco-friendly, but you know, that was where it started for me. And I went over, did an exam with L'Oreal. That went really well. I told this story in Sunday service the other day. Somebody actually asked me, said, where did you start to talk about going to L'Oreal? And like, it was such a funny story, Dale. That's a very, very funny thing about Sunday service. You can have like your notes set up, and then somebody asks you a question, and then an hour goes by. You know.
Yeah, I obviously I did color in classes, and I could, you know, do whatever I could do with highlights and tints and all that. But it really wasn't my thing, you know. Now, did I appreciate it? I love color. I absolutely adore color. It's actually one of those things that I probably wish I was better at it, to be totally honest, because I actually love the dynamic of how you color hair. Like, I love how you can actually make a haircut look so much better, or I love the way you can actually color a haircut or cut a haircut and then color it. So that combination always sort of, for me, was I needed somebody, eventually it was Andrew, but I needed somebody who got into my brain space. So what I thought I'd do was I focused a little bit more on cutting hair and styling hair. So I really sort of worked on that. And then we had a few colorists in Kieran Salon that were really good. And I sort of more let them do what they did best. Not to say that people can't do it all. I can still do my wife's color and stuff like that, but it's not something that, you know, I'm going to be setting it up an Instagram account on for sure.
Ooh, do you know what? I actually wanted to be an actress, so I I just always wanted to do acting, and my mom used to always say, because of the amount of times that she got called up to the school because I was like sick, and she was like, "Oh, here we go, the Abbey actress," and oh, there's my child. Yes, this would have to happen.
Don't you pause it?
I have it on the
Go.
So yeah, I actually wanted to be an actress, and my mom used to call me an Abbey actress because of the amount of time she had to come up to the school to collect me from when I was sick. But I got actually in 1995 I got accepted into the Gaiety School of Acting, but my mom and dad were just like, you know, oh, you need a real job. I know that's a terrible thing, but that's what they didn't see acting as a real job. They would have seen, they were real grafters. Like my mum and dad were working from the ages of 11 and 10, I think it was, or 11 and 13. And so it was more about kind of, you know, like, I guess a career. That's what they were like. So anyway, I actually just wanted to leave school. And the reason I wanted to leave school was I felt like nobody, I don't know, I just felt like the teachers didn't really get me. They didn't kind of, I was so creative and I was so sometimes in my own little world, you know, that I nearly looked, is it disengaged a lot of the times? But I was actually in my head, like thinking, oh, this is what we could do here. Like I was just having this like wonderful little life in my own head. But there was two teachers in particular who really got me. And they were the subjects that I actually did really well in. And one was maths and the other was history. And the one that I actually did worst in was business studies. And my teacher at that time took a complete dislike to me, because if somebody like laughed in the class, I'd be the type of person, if someone made me laugh, I'd laugh, but I couldn't stop and I'd keep chuckling. And she put me out of the class one day and told me that, you know, if I kept going on like this, that I'm going to amount to be nothing, all of like lots of words. And we've heard this so many times, haven't we, from, you know, people's experience. So I kind of felt like, you know, I wasn't understood in school, and I actually just wanted to, like, I just wanted to leave school. So hairdressing was actually, you know, named as one of those jobs that you could leave school for. And so I actually I just said to my mum, I'm gonna like go. And I actually went into Peter Marks on Grafton Street as well. I went into Kat's Hair Group. So I went into a few places, but I was determined. I got a job that day. I actually got offered a couple of jobs. Yeah, I got offered a job in Kat's, and my mum knew someone who knew Ian. And you know, they had already decided they were going to give me the job. And my mum met this girl at the school one day, and she was like, oh, my Katrina has gone for an interview, and I think could have been brother-in-law's salon. And she was like, oh, I'll put a good word in for you. So I think my mum still like says that she kind of got me the job.
Yeah.
But and I just, do you know what, I actually just started to fall in love with like people, and like, you know, so I didn't actually want to be a hairdresser. I actually just wanted to leave school. And I actually wanted to be an actress. That was really the route I wanted to go down. Also I wanted to be in a girl band as well, and I went for Valerie Rowe was doing these auditions.
I was just singing.
I went for an audition, and I did like a dance routine and all, and I did like I sang a song. And I was shit. I'm such a crap singer. I can only sing Black Velvet when I have a few drinks on me. But it just was not for me. And it's mad. I just fell in love with. I fell in love with kind of, I think, the community of hairdressing. You know, I felt like now there's somewhere that I actually feel like I belong, whereas I didn't always feel that way in school. And it's something that I nurture now with Darcy. She's so creative. She's actually a great artist. She draws all the time. She's only 9 and she can draw, and I zone into it. And she has this amazing teacher now as well, who, like, you know, she rang us for her school report a few weeks ago, and she just said, Shani, you know, Darcy's absolutely incredible and all these amazing things. And the one thing that she's struggling with is just organization. And I was like, gets that for me. But this particular teacher is really into the creative side. So what she does with, like in Darcy's classes, she gets all our students do all their creative work first, and then they do the academic stuff, and so she gets them to do all that first. And Darcy, since she has this new teacher, is like buzzing coming from school. Like she doesn't even want to leave school. She's just like, oh my God, a great day today. Whereas before that, she had days where she was like upset and emotional. And I actually felt like I could see, you know, what she was going through is what I went through years ago. And I didn't, that wasn't even a thing now. So it's just great that we have these amazing creative people here.
What were the, because we're talking about subjects where she's arty, what were the things in that you felt, did you find colour easy to pick up because of the math side of it? So did you find that easy? And where we are struggling bits in the early days?
With hairdressing? I would say like what I struggled with, I think I actually struggled sometimes with, like, even though I'm a talker, I struggled with those one-to-one conversations sometimes with people. I feel like hairdressing really brought that out, whereas I could actually have like a one-to-one conversation with somebody. But like the hairdressing side, I struggled in everything actually. I struggled in like everything. Like I feel like, so that was my business studies teacher, and now I'm a businesswoman. I struggled more with business than anything else. Do you know what I mean? And I do think that was that self-talk, because I'm not good at business. I'm not good at business. I'm not good at business. Do you know what I mean? Great hairdresser. Oh, you're a great hairdresser. And then I realized, hang on, I'm actually shit at business. But I wasn't. I just had to tell myself that for about 15 years for then to actually realize, do you know what? You are good.